The PlayStation 2 had a lot to live up to when it was released in 2000. It was a follow-up to what was at the time the most successful console. Sony also really hyped up the PS2, which led to both high expectations and problems meeting demand at launch.
The shortages, the PlayStation 2 shortages, like think about that for a sec. Like, what are you talking about? There is a product that is like ultra cool that I can't go buy in the store. Why not? It's like to me, it's like, I think the PlayStation 2 was the first real deal console that had this weird thing that we actually know as a standard today.
I think this might have been the first time that I heard about a game system launching, really having that speculative market of people like going and buying 3 or 4 of them, put them up on eBay and make, you know, $1,000 in a day.
You know, when you think about the PlayStation 2 when it was announced, they talked about all kinds of crazy stuff. They talked about the emotion engine and how, like, you know, it's so powerful, we're gonna see the emotion of these characters in the games like we've never seen before.
I was playing games on the Dreamcast at the time, and compared to that, the launch lineup for the PS2 was kind of meh.
I do remember being completely underwhelmed by both the launch lineup they had in Japan and also the quality of the titles. It was seemed like they were largely pretty PlayStation games.
For the most part, I thought the Dreamcast stuff looked pretty good compared to it. There were some exceptions. I thought Tekken Tag Tournament was phenomenal, just looked great, played awesome. But I didn't think anything surpassed Soul Calibur on the Dreamcast, which was a launch lineup for that system the previous year.
And like, I think we had these like imaginary dreams of the PlayStation 2, which was probably fueled by that ad campaign they had, because if you remember the ad campaign for the PlayStation 2 in America, it was that whole like PlayStation 9 thing. Remember, it was like these, you know, kid living in the future, matrixing into his PlayStation 9 or whatever. And so yeah, I think that conjured up all these like ideas of crazy future stuff. With the DualShock 2, you know, like one of the future promises, right, was analog buttons. And like it can sense how hard you're pushing, right? So if you really want to go fast, you push it, you know, really hard. If you know, kind of just want to hit the throttle a little bit, you kind of, you know, feather it. So, but right out the, you know, out the gate for a lot of those games, they didn't even support that.
I didn't get into the hype at all because, like, at the time I was enjoying the Dreamcast and so I was playing like a real game that was concrete and it was like, this is fun and I like this and Soul Calibur looks gorgeous. And then I'd see the Final Fantasy VIII tech demo on the PS2 and I'd see the dance scene and I'd be like, well, that's not a game, you're not playing that.
So for me, leading up to the PS2 launch, it was kind of a time of apprehension because at the time for me, console video games were kind of a synonym for 2D fighting games, and the previous Sony hardware was not really good for people like me. Of course, if you guys remember, the Sony PlayStation was a great console but didn't do 2D fighting games very well. A lot of animation cuts, lots of long loading times. So I was kind of expecting the worst, but you know, when the PS2 finally did come out, of course it surpassed everybody's expectations. It was great for 2D fighting games, but it also really opened things up for all kinds of other games as well.
The one game I remember clear as day was SSX.
There had probably been snowboarding games on the original PlayStation, but I remember this being really different because it was almost like a racing snowboarding game. The other game I remember is Dynasty Warriors. I don't know if it was the original Dynasty Warriors, but it was certainly the first Dynasty Warriors game I played on the PS2. And that was like, it was cool because they were saying, look how many guys are on screen at the same time. And that was like a sell factor for Sony and for PS2. It's like, look how many guys we can render on the screen at the same time. And you're sitting there playing and you're like, wow, look how many, I'm kicking the ass of like 15 guys at once. That's pretty awesome. That was before we figured out that that was basically all Dynasty Warriors does, and they're still doing that today.
In the end, obviously, you know, the lifetime cycle of development and developers that have learned how to create games for the PlayStation 2 has proven that that box had incredibly long legs. You look at the games that came out at the beginning of the PlayStation 2's life, and then, you know, compare those to the ones that came out at the end, you know, it almost looks like two different consoles, you know? So hats off to Sony for making a killer box that really had a length of time. That, you know, it really lasted for a long while. I think you look at the recent sales for the PlayStation 2, you know, I think they were reporting as of September 2009, selling PlayStation 2s basically new. I think they finally just stopped that last year. And I think they'd reached like 140 million consoles worldwide or something, which is like literally, you know, the most successful console in the history of video games. So it's pretty awesome.